It might not feel like it right now, but fall is getting close. And so is hunting season. And a lot of us are heading to the range to check our rifles and to zero our scopes. But unlike most years, ammunition is in really short supply. And it has been since early last year. And we can go through some ammo quick at the range trying to zero a scope. So I wanted to try to come up with a method that would let us zero our scope with the fewest shots as possible, but still give us a good zero that we could have confidence in out in the woods hunting. And what I came up with was a method that uses 4 shots. And I carried this rifle to the range yesterday, tried it out, and it worked like a charm. Okay, I dropped the block on this. It had been a single shot or a bolt action. You pulled a bolt. And I bore sighted this rifle just with it in a stand, looking through the bore. I lined it up so that the target was dead center in the barrel. And then looking through the scope, I adjusted the crosshairs until they were on dead center on the target. I then fired a shot at a target at 25 yards, off half an inch to the left. I made an adjustment. I fired 2 shots at 100 yards. And I want my zero for this rifle to be just a hair over 2.5 inches high at 100 yards. So I made my adjustment based on that 2-shot group, fired my 4th shot, and it was absolutely dead on the money. And everything went great. The problem is when I got to thinking about it, and I realized that just wasn't going to work for a lot of you, because where we run into problems at the range zeroing our rifles is when things don't go smooth, which is so often the case. Well, we run into something. And as a matter of fact, my buddy Joey, he was dealing with something yesterday. Right. So I modified that, and instead of this being how to zero your rifle in 4 shots, it's how to zero your rifle in 5 shots. But I need to describe why each step's important, and more importantly, I want to make sure you're prepared so that when you go to the range and things don't go according to plan, you're not sitting there just frustrated thinking, what now? I want you prepared for the what now. And so let's go through this method and let me describe what I came up with. So we want to start with putting up a target at 25 yards. And keep in mind, this video is for zeroing a scope. So this is for a rifle that you have no idea where the scope is. You just mounted it or whatever. If you're there verifying that it's just still good from last year, you can skip this part and just, you don't need to shoot a target at 25 unless you just are really concerned. And if you're just super confident in your bore sighting abilities or whatever device you use, you could skip this and just go ahead and shoot at 100 yards. The problem though is, what if you miss at 100? Then what do you do? And that's what we're trying to avoid here. We're trying to avoid wasting ammo, and we don't want to be sitting there going, now what do I do? And if you miss at 100 yards, seriously, you don't know where you missed, you just wasted a shot, and you haven't learned anything. So you're still starting it, from scratch. And that's how we tend to get in trouble a lot as far as wasting ammo. And if you're low on ammo, that's not good. Put up a target at 25 yards, you're probably going to hit it. You're not guaranteed to, but if you miss, your scope is way off. And you need to be prepared to go from zeroing a rifle to troubleshooting at that point. And if you miss at 25 yards, move the target to 12.5 yards. If you miss at 12.5 yards, you need to pack it up and go home. Your scope's broke, or your bases are just, something's really not right there. You're done. Okay, at 25 yards, this scope here has quarter MOA adjustments. And most of you know what that means. Some scopes are half MOA on adjustment, but the quarter MOA adjustment, every time I move the scope 1 click, the point of impact on the bullet is going to change 1/4 inch at 100 yards. So 4 clicks equals 1 inch. And most of us know that. 50 yards is half the distance. So I'm going to need to move twice as many clicks on the scope to get the same amount of adjustment that I would at 100 yards. So to adjust the scope and to move the point of impact 1 inch at 50 yards, I have to move the scope 8 clicks. 25 is half that distance. So I've got to double the amount of clicks again. So to move my point of impact at 25 yards, 1 inch, I have to move the scope 16 clicks. If I completely miss the target at 25 yards, I'm using standard Redfield targets, so I've got a 1 foot by 1 foot grid, and then the entire target itself is 13 inches by 13 inches. If I completely miss that, I know my scope is that it's off, or I'm hitting at least 7 inches off from the bullseye. Okay, so I'm going to have to move my scope, whatever 7 times 16 is. I'm going to have to move my scope a minimum of that many clicks to get to point of impact dead center on the target. And that's where you want to hit at 25 yards, is dead center on the bullseye. That should put you anywhere from 1.5 inches, 3.5 inches high at 100 yards. Okay, if you're completely missing it at 25, your scope might not have enough travel to get you to the center. All right. So anyway, just throwing that out there. And hopefully, if you didn't have any, if you had no problems bore sighting your rifle, you're going to hit the target at 25 yards. That's just if you couldn't bore sight for whatever reason. So if you bore sighted, you should hit the target at 25. Make your adjustments. In my case, I was perfect on elevation. My bullet hit 1/2 inch to the left, so I adjusted the scope 8 clicks to the right. Okay, now for the 100-yard shots. So far, we fired 1 shot. Now we're moving on to 100 yards, and this is where I had to change this from a 4-shot zeroing method to a 5-shot method. Most of us hunters, we're not shooting our rifles that much. So truthfully, for most of us, when we go to the range pre-season to check our scope, really we're not there to check our scope or to zero it. That trip's generally a lot more than that. That trip's to see how our rifle shoots. It's to see how we're shooting, so it's also a little practice session, and it's to zero the scope and make adjustments. It's hard to accomplish all of that with 2 shots. All right, so that's why I changed from 4 shots to 5. You need a minimum of a 3-shot group to really know how your rifle's shooting. In my case, my 2 shots, they were further apart than I, had hoped, but I know this rifle really well, and I know the ammunition that I was shooting in it really well, and I had just cleaned this barrel before I went. Those were my fouling shots, and I knew my first few shots were going to be a little loose, and as I fired a few shots, my group was going to tighten right up, and sure enough, my 4th shot out of here was just dead on the money. Most of you don't know your rifles that well, and especially if you've got a new rifle or you've had to change up ammunition because you couldn't get whatever brand or grain bullets you used to shoot, whatever. Okay, you need 3 shots to know what you got. So for your 100 yards, you want to fire 3 shots. And whatever those 3 shots are, that's where you're at. All right, so whether it's a 1-inch 3-shot group or it's a 6-inch 3-shot group, hopefully it's not over 6 inches. That's where you're at, that's what you got. You're there to zero your rifle. You go from wherever the center of that group is, you make your adjustments to the bullseye, and you fire a 5th shot just to verify that you moved the rifle in the correct direction. And if that 5th shot does not hit exactly where you want it to, where you wanted to zero to, it might not, depending on the size of your 3-shot group. All you're doing with that shot is just making sure you're in the general vicinity of where you should be, according to how big that 3-shot group was. I mean, if you want more than that, if you want to dial in the accuracy and things like that, it's too late for that. You're at the range zeroing. This is getting ready to go to the woods, and you know, you're probably running low on ammunition. And that's the whole point of this again, to, you know, so we're not frustrated and wondering, okay, what do I do now? And we're not wasting ammo that we don't have. And I know from firsthand experience what it's like being at the range, running out of ammunition, running out of daylight, and running out of time because the season's about to open. It's a bad place to be. So we're trying to avoid that. Your 3-shot group, it is what it is. And this is something else too. We got it in our heads these days that we need a sub-MOA rifle in order to go hunting. All right, that's not the case. As long as, if you've got a 2 or 3 inch shot group at 100 yards, you can go deer hunting with that. And you can kill deer out to 200 yards, no problem. The big thing is you just need to know what you have, and you need to be able to zero that. And that's why, you know, everybody past 100 years has known to zero off the center of the group. That's going to give you the greatest probability of making the hit out in the field hunting. If you want to come back later and then try to improve your accuracy or something like that, okay, that's a whole different trip, a whole different purpose at that point. And at that point, you need some ammo and different things. And if your rifle, if you know that it normally shoots 1 or 2 inch groups, and all of a sudden you're shooting 6 inch groups, okay, you got a problem then. Something's wrong at that point. It's probably your scope, or the rings are loose, or the base, or something. Okay, if you know something's wrong, you need to fix it. I don't care if opening day is tomorrow, you need to fix it before you go hunting. I mean, that's the thing about firearms, is when something's not right, we need to correct it. None of us want to hear that, but it's the truth. Okay, if you're in that 2 to 3 inch range, just go hunting with it. Unless you have the time and the ammunition to fix it. But you got to be aware, you know, of what you're getting into once you start going down that road, and that you're subject to run out of either quick, time or ammo. So just throwing that out there. I know I rambled a lot there at the end, but there's a lot of things that can go wrong when zeroing your rifle, and it's right here at season and you're low on ammunition. And I'm hoping that'll just make sure you're prepared for the what if or now what that you can run into at the range. And every one of us that fool with rifles, either we've ran into that or we're gonna run into it. We've all been there at some point, or will be. So hopefully this really helps some of you out, and it helps save you some ammunition. And I guess the big thing is, I just want to make sure you understand that it doesn't have to be a sub-MOA rifle for you to go hunting and to confidently take deer. If you're doing a 6 inch group, you can hunt at 100 yards. If it suddenly changed from, you know, a 1 inch, 2 inch rifle to 6 inches, something you need to be concerned. If it's always been 6 inches, go hunting. I passed 100 yards, I don't know about that. That's getting awful iffy then. 3 inch groups at 100 yards. That's going to give you 6 inches at 200. You're good. Okay, take what you got and go make it work. Especially if season's here and you're low on ammo. I really hope that helps some of you out. And for myself, I'm ready for deer season. And thankfully, things went well for me with this one. But part of what made me realize all this was things didn't go well for my buddy Joey. He got a brand new Thompson Center Pro Hunter and just put a scope on it, bases, rings, the whole 9 yards. He completely missed the target at 25 yards. Okay, moved the target to 12 and a half. He seen how far off he was, did the math, knew he wasn't going to have enough adjustment in the scope. He didn't end up wasting a lot of ammo, zeroing his rifle. He did go through a few rounds when he started the troubleshooting process. Okay, but at that point, he knew he wasn't zeroing it anymore. And he's not counting on using that rifle for this season. He just got it. All right, he's ready for season. And that's the problem if you wait to the last minute to try to set up a rifle. Again, hey, we've all been there. So, especially on that new rifle we can't wait to carry into the field to go hunting with. You know, a lot of times, you know, we don't get a new rifle until right at season, and we're really into it. And that's when we are struggling to get it to shoot and find ammo and all that good stuff. So anyway, I really hope this helps some of you out. And just to recap, fire shot at 25-yard target. Whatever your adjustments you need to make, you're going to need to move your scope 4 times as many clicks at 25 yards as you would 100. Fire a 3-shot group at 100. See what you got. Pick you a spot in the center of that 3-shot group, and then adjust for elevation and windage based on however far away from the bullseye you are, or from where you want to zero your rifle. And I would suggest most of you zero your rifle 2, 2.5, maybe 3 inches high at 100 yards. That's going to give you your best maximum point blank range where you can shoot the furthest distance before your bullet drops too far and you start missing deer. So anyway, I hope that really helps out. And God bless. And have a good day.